It's time for us to continue with the next conversation on our schedule. And this time we're actually going to cast our minds forward to the future. I'm sort of pointing as if it's over there, but it could be over there. But yes, we're going to look at the future and how we can unlock that future where there is a transparent and efficient decentralized treasury management. We're going to be looking at the other blockchain ecosystems as we kind of make that path or chart that path towards a sustainable decentralized governance system. It's a great topic. Got a great moderator to join us on the stage in the next few minutes. Please welcome Henri Arslanian. He is the co-founder and managing partner of 9 Blocks Capital Management, and also his panelist. Come on up. Here you come.
As was mentioned, guys, thank you very much for being with us. I know you have a choice of what to do, where to go, and thanks for coming so we can talk and share about the exciting developments going in the field of treasury management, a lot of activity there, and how to make it more transparent and efficient. I can't promise you we'll have all the answers today, but I promise you'll be fun, insightful, and exciting. And the reason is because we have a dream team panel today to cover some of these developments that we've had. Let me start actually with Tomi. Tomi Astikainen, I would love to introduce him. He's an interoperability maximalist, Kickstarter of the Unifiers Cross-Chain Initiative, Project Catalyst OG since Fund 3, and next week he's joining the Web3 Foundation as a governance coordinator. So here you go. One fun thing, by the way, about Tomi, he lives in Finland and he cycles in the winter. That's the real way of doing it. Somebody who lives in Dubai, we don't even know how that feels. Next is Amandeep. He leads the strategy at DAOstar, the nonprofit standards body for DAOs. His work has been very instrumental in setting up the baseline standards in the DAO ecosystem on EVM networks. One fun fact about Amandeep, he's never worked in an office. Here we go, post-COVID, one of the benefits on that side. Amandeep, great to have you with us. Next but not least is Massimo Morini from the University of Lugano. He's been a bank head of quants, a blockchain chief economist, and an advisor at the World Bank, the MAS, and now even the Cardano Foundation. Obviously done tremendous work on research on DeFi, and now teaches, of course, blockchain and finance in different universities. One thing about Massimo you probably don't know, when he's not busy doing all this crypto stuff, he's actually busy. He's a winemaker. Makes great Italian red wine. So if you want to find out more about that, tonight at the gala, you know what to do. Here we go. That's the way to do it. And last but not least, Andreas Pletscher, my former colleague at PwC, actually, from the Cardano Foundation, who's an operational specialist with a strong background in financial services and consulting. And he's joined the Cardano Foundation 2 years ago and really been engaged since the impact of Voltaire. One thing you may not know about Andreas, by the way, he's a massive scuba diver, and he even has his rescue diver certification. For those of you who dive, that's the one you want to get, and he's the guy you want to dive with in case you get into travel. Guys, a lot of stuff to talk about. It's going to be a very exciting panel. I want to really start maybe with you, Amandeep. And I want to ask the question to all of you, especially as you kick off. How, if you had to rate DAOs and Treasury in our space from 1 to 10, or 0 to 10, 0 being worst, 10 being great, what grade would you give to where we are right now in treasury management in DeFi?
Right now, probably 1, but for maybe 3 for effort.
Really? Okay. Yeah. Why is that?
I mean, for example, DAO treasuries at the moment manage around $25 billion, give or take. And depending on the market conditions, that oscillates between, say, $18 to $35 billion.
Okay.
And the majority of this is in native tokens. And I don't think that's good practice because the purchasing power of a DAO is largely affected by denoting everything from grants funding to foundation funding to protocol incentives and all that on native tokens. So even such a small part of treasury diversification is not being properly handled. And then there are all these other sides of it, right? Things like, do DAOs have an annual expense policy? Do they have an expectation when it comes to funding requirements? Do they have a general process for onboarding and managing treasury managers? Things like that. And I don't see any of this really happening. But I do see the conversations sort of starting to pick up at DAOs like Arbitrum and Uniswap. So, points for effort, but the current state would not get too many points in that scale of 0
Okay,
to
so
10.
1 and 3. Okay, Tomi, would you give them a different score?
Well, I hope that we meet in 5 years' time and we see non-profits and corporations and nation states looking at Cardano, looking at Polkadot, saying that's what we want to do.
Yeah.
So that would be like 11, right? At the moment, maybe 4.
And why is that? What do you think for?
It's better than 1 because Polkadot actually has USDT, USDC, and DOT in the treasury. So it's more varied and it's an on-chain mechanism that is parameterized, so it can be tweaked. So there was just a great session by Claudio who showed the last slide and said that you cannot get it right the first time. You just need to get going, and I completely agree with that.
So you need to keep going. I guess that's what it is. But do you believe? Let's say maybe Massimo, I'll move it to you. And from the reason the grades are so low, you believe it's because of the decentralized nature, the young nature of the industry, or it's just the way it is, and it's just going to take time for a treasury to get better? And what grade would you give, by the way, as well, before you answer?
Okay, since the grades have always increased
As a professor,
so
yeah.
far from 5 to 6.
Wow. Okay.
In the sense that we are not yet even at a sufficient level, to say, okay, it's okay to do a treasury with DAOs. Some people may be perplexed, but we have achieved something amazing, in the pure fact that we are trying to do that. Already we deserve being near to sufficiency. I do think that we are young in a sense, because we can be more efficient, we can be more effective as well, but we need experience, and we probably still need some further technology in a sense.
But when you say experience, what is the way? Is it getting people who are doing treasury management in TradFi? Is it in other projects like Amandeep mentioned, or how do you think we're going to get that expertise?
Well, blockchain can be efficient. We have seen that, for example, with settlement of payments. But if you look at the decentralized system that was used by banks in order to transfer money, it started that it took days, and if now they have managed to be more efficient, it's because they are centralizing, either around the central bank has to manage payments, or using credit cards that extend credit, even if there is a delay. So the blockchain has proven that it's able to be more efficient than most of the other systems, maybe not the most centralized, but and you also see that Bitcoin was much faster in settlement than the traditional banking system, but Ethereum was faster, and Cardano is even faster. So I do think that we will be able to benefit from automation. You mentioned DeFi, In DeFi, through automation, some aspects of management, like moving collateral, is incredibly more efficient. We still have not yet something similar for treasury management, but I do think it's a matter of time, experience, and technology, as usual.
Very interesting. Andreas, what do you think on this? Do you believe it's the decentralized nature that is making it so difficult? Especially from your perspective now at the foundation. And what grade would you give to start?
Well, as it's just about to start, I would give it a neutral 5, being a Swiss, huh? But the thing really is, it's not the decentralization that makes it complicated. It's the nature of it that it's just new. So we don't know it. We are just about to learn. And I like the analogy from Massimo about the financial transactions. It used an evolution over decades and hundreds of years. We are now just in the start. You cannot expect perfection. And we come with the old world and expect everything to be perfect from day one. It isn't. We're going to fail. And how do we learn? By failing, by trying, by failing again, and making it better.
It's really interesting. I mean, on the failing and learning from others, I'll bring it to you, Tomi. Like, what do you think the Cardano Foundation can learn, let's say, from what Polkadot has done in this space, for example?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, we started the Unifiers initiative a year ago, and it was striking how non-tribalistic people are now, and they're really willing to learn from each other. And that was a surprise for us, and positive surprise. So we've already talked with some people here, and it's probably going to happen that we have like monthly calls to exchange ideas and brainstorm and see what the second mover is doing, because if Polkadot was the first mover, or maybe Arbitrum, then the second mover advantage is to see like what was happening before. Let's not make the same mistakes, but also Polkadot can learn something from Cardano, seeing like, okay, what are the guardrails they're building? Okay, how are they using milestones-based funding, all these things. So it's very interesting to see two different approaches to the same thing.
I mean, you just mentioned Arbitrum. Actually, I mean, maybe move it to you, Amandeep. I mean, I know you're very involved in some of these new standards that are being put in place, right? From the DAO metadata standard and others. Do you believe that is a solution? Like, do you believe having standardization? Because you can argue in finance, right? We have a lot of these different standards in traditional finance, right? Whether it comes to payments, different ISO certifications, different like TradFi standards that people are using, right? And I mean, even think about payments on SWIFT. That's been one of the whole elements there. Do you believe that's something what we're doing in the DAO space would help when it comes to DAO treasury management?
Yeah, I do think standards would help, but the kind of standards that would be helpful are not core treasury management standards, but standards that would help DAO make sense of it a little bit better. What I mean by that is, say the Cardano treasury mobilizes in the next few months, and somebody comes to Cardano and says, hey, let's allocate 5% of this treasury sort of into an index fund or into more stable assets to fund operational expenses, right? So how do you, as a community member, judge that proposal? What sort of data do you have to evaluate that proposal? Do you have data on the current operational expenses of Cardano? Do you have data on what kind of grants we are funding and may want to fund in 2 years? Do you have any data on the kind of ROI these grants and experiments are going to generate, right? So the kind of standards that are needed for DAOs like Cardano and the remainder of the ecosystem are standards that improve the baseline information availability in the ecosystem, because DAOs have always had this principal agent problem, where we started out from this philosophical high ground that everything needs to be super decentralized and super autonomous, that what we practically ended up was a set of stakeholders who have a different set of vested interests, and the DAO did not really have anyone to really care for itself. So standards can help shift this information asymmetry and give the community more tools to evaluate proposals at their face value.
What do you think of this, Massimo, on the standards? I mean, obviously you were very involved with Algorand when this was happening. What's your view on that? Do you believe it could help in getting more transparency when proposals are there?
Well, Algorand was even earlier, than the examples we are mentioning. And there were many things I didn't like, but also a few that I really liked. There was high participation, there was very high interest. And I don't think obviously technological and not only technological standards. In the case of Treasury, in some cases, even the legal framework around, can help. But there are things at a higher level, think, for example, also in Cardano, you have a very parameterized and incredibly automated system to manage the economic flows of the chain. And up to a point, there are framework decisions, how much goes into the treasury per year. Now it's controlled by parameters. And now what is in the treasury was the maximum amount that should be spent. And several decisions that are at a higher level, and I think that what is very important, that was mentioned, is the fact that you need to allow people to make decisions that are sufficiently structured and complete to make sense. So you have to understand what the purpose is. If you only ask, do you want to make this investment or not? Or if you only ask, do you want to change this parameter or not? Doesn't make so much sense. It makes much more sense. And you start seeing this if you say, okay, if we change the parameters with this combination, that could be the outcome. This could be an alternative that needs to be analysis. And it's very good that there are bodies that work for that, that help on that. I think that's the fundamental point.
But even on the fundamental point, don't you think that, let's think about a non-DAO world, right? This hotel, right? Should the waiter make a decision on that the CFO does at this hotel management perspective, right? Do you believe even ideologically every token holder in a DAO should have a say in the treasury management, or the people are a bit more qualified for it, or have there should be a tiering system from that perspective overall? Not only I'm not talking about anything.
No, that's a super good question, but usually there is quite a selection of the people who participate. Even too much at times, and my worry is more if there is a conflict of interest. Rather than a lack of knowledge. But I do think that in this case, delegation can be very useful. Because that particularly for the small players that makes a lot of sense, and only delegates may have the possibility to actually have the full understanding of the issue. The fact that there is someone that works on doing analysis and on showing what are the full effects of a decision, I think it's relevant. Metrics and forms of accountability are crucial, because that's what everyone can understand, and base their decisions on that. But then, for other decisions, for example, for example, decisions that regard SPOs. SPOs are business people, they are technology people, and I think they need to have a say for sure, in what affects them, 100%.
Andreas, I'll move it to you. To a bit what Massimo was saying, you were previously at a Big Four consulting firm at PwC, right? And where I would argue that what the traditional world has realized, on certain elements, you need an independent third party to come and take a view on these things, right? So you mentioned, Massimo, the conflicts of interest, for example, right? Which I think are a big problem in DAOs overall, right? And even delegation may solve that, I'm not sure, right? I know you always compared it to the Swiss model, right? Where you can have literally a canton that wants to put something to a vote, a couple of people decide against it, and it puts the whole thing to rest. What's your view on what Massimo said on the, let's say, the flaws or potential upside with the model?
Well, it's a very good question, not easy. But the point really is, you have to see what happens now in Cardano is you suddenly, as of one day, you give power to the people. So they need to know and learn how to deal with the power. And the last piece of resistance, and I don't envy the treasury, because they need to be the last piece of resistance to make it proper, and everybody wants to have access and get some money for whatever purpose. They all mean for good. But at the end of the day, treasury needs to make sure that it flows, it survives, it has the liquidity, and it has actually been used in the way it should be used. So I would like to refer to a statement of I must say, brilliant keynote speaker, Don, yesterday. He said, distributed doesn't mean unorganized. So I would say the one part that needs to be really nice organized, with guardrails, with the parameters, that's treasury.
Yeah. It's interesting, for our even our hedge fund, we manage, or a crypto hedge fund, we're market neutral, so we get approached by a lot of treasuries. And just when I look at a lot of foundations, how it's been done, in the last 6 to 9 months, I've seen a massive shift, actually, of the quality of people, the knowledge. If you think about a normal company, if you have a couple $100 million of assets sitting there and doing nothing, the CFO would be fired on the spot, right? For some reason in our world, we see, that's good, and we discuss, and it's very interesting how this, and now that shift is changing on that perspective. I just want to bring it up to guys, another topic. You mentioned before, Massimo, as well, on the legal frameworks, right? We are in the UAE today. Yesterday, another emirate, Ras Al Khaimah, announced, actually one of the first in the world, the legal regime for DAOs. Whereas a DAO now, you can come get legally incorporated, even get visas, even get office space if you want, operate, get a bank account for the foundation, like a proper legal wrapper for it. To what extent do you believe, and some people have tried this, Marshall Islands have tried, Cayman Islands have tried, but this is, I would say, one of the most comprehensive one that we have, and it's not surprising it's happening here in the UAE. To what extent do you believe such kind of legal clarity on the organizational level, at the wrapper level, can help when it comes to treasury? I'll start with you, Aman, actually.
Right. Yeah, I think it'd be super helpful, especially. So we have a working group at DAOstar. It's called Millennium Falcon. It's a fancy name for a regulatory interop working group. And what we are trying to come up with is essentially, how can legislators across the world recognize DAOs for what they are and regulate them. And there's something called as the DAO policy trilemma, in which the main problem that has been happening so far is most regulators sort of treat DAOs as normal Web2 entities, and that creates problems, right? Because when you have an organization that has, say, 500,000 token holders from around the globe, it's sort of hard to pick a domicile and contain certain activities. So what we've been advocating for is sort of a loose regulation where, getting incorporated at, say, Russell Kaima would also give you some regulatory clarity on operating in the US or in the EU. So we've been sort of trying to consolidate regulators into a more global standard when it comes to regulating DAOs. And also the funny thing here is that we use the term DAO quite a lot in the industry, but for somebody outside of the industry, even for lawmakers, it is really hard to make sense of DAOs, right? If you go to them and you ask them, hey, what's Optimism DAO, right? Where can you find all its members? Where can you find its treasury? How do you figure out how decisions are made? And it's really hard for them to get access to this information. So we've been funded by the Cardano Foundation and ENS DAO to build a regulatory dashboard. What this does is it establishes a metadata standard in which, irrespective of the kind of DAO you are or however your governance is structured, it lets you publish information in a global format so that anybody else who's making laws for DAOs can consume of this dashboard and understand you, because that's the first step, right? Understanding what's going on here and then making laws.
What do you guys think on this, on the legal framework? Or Tomi, what do you think of the legal framework? How do you think it helps?
I'm definitely no expert in this area, but I would say the fact that Polkadot has been talking with the SEC since 2019, and they pretty much checked all the boxes of...
Talking is a very diplomatic term.
Well, proving that they are decentralized and they check all the boxes, so it brings certain peace of mind for the builders that they know that this is treated as a software that it is. So they don't need to worry about that. So I guess it's just that.
Because the conflicts are there. I mean, Massimo, don't you agree? Like, if there is, even if we put a legal structure, these issues are not going to go away.
At times I have the impression that what I would desire the most from the regulators is that they do not create problems, and they do not lead to misunderstandings. At times when I look at the European regulations, for example, if they start to ask for someone who is responsible for the ledger, that's a tragedy. What can you explain to them that or for example, it would be great, if they made it clear that that's a situation in which limited responsibility should apply even more than in other situations. I would say that just clarifying these things from a legal point of view would help extremely. And then in my opinion, just focusing on, making sure that technology has been properly audited, that there is real transparency, that would be much more important, than trying to mimic regulations from the traditional world. That be already a lot.
You don't agree, Andreas?
Well, I kind of agree because I come from old Web2 industry, but on the other hand, we want to have distributed, decentralized organizations, and the first thing we cry for is rules and regulations. So why do we do that in the first place? We could stay in the normal, structured, hierarchical model, no?
Yeah. No, I mean, you're right, but I think at the end of the day also, these entities need to operate, right? I mean...
but again, it doesn't mean you cannot be organized.
Yeah.
You can organize yourself. Doesn't mean you have always hold your hand with the regulator.
Yeah.
Yes, it helps, but then why doing it?
Yeah. But it's so true what you're saying. People often don't know. Like you, Massimo, I've been teaching for 10 years a crypto course at University of Hong Kong, and we do a whole chapter on DAOs. And what I found amazing is, back in the 1600s, when the idea of a joint stock company was invented, where here we allow this entity where you don't have personal liability anymore, and your liability is limited to a company by shares. It gave rise to a whole new world of entrepreneurship. Back in the day, it was the West Indies companies and so on and so forth. And God knows what DAOs will give rise. By the way, it may not work, but there's a chance that actually may completely transform how we know it. And that's how actually I might want to bring it back to you even on the grant side as well. I know you guys did amazing research a couple of years, not so long ago, on the impact of how grants were given and the actually practical impact. You know, can you maybe share with us what was the biggest takeaway? What's the one lesson we should all learn of how the grants were given and what worked and what didn't work?
Right. The main lesson is that you should not give away money without any expectations. It's not pretty. Yeah, you would think that that's an obvious, takeaway. But if you look at the last, say, 3 or 4 years, hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe upwards of $500 million have been distributed as grants, and you could go to any project and ask them, hey, what KPIs improved, or what kind of sticky effects have you had with distributing this much amount of capital, and you're going to get a very vague answer. And that's sad, right? I find that extremely disappointing. So our research has been on, so we have this separate working group, it's called Grants Innovation Lab. All of this is non-profit open source work, by the way. And what we've been trying to do is sort of figuring out how do we better measure impact. Because so far we've been fixated on measuring outcomes, things like did you complete this milestone, or did you do exactly what you requested the funds for, but we did not really measure impact. And the stack of tooling has been lagging. We've so far failed to stop grant farming. We have sort of failed to port over somebody's credentials from one ecosystem to another ecosystem. There are multiple grant operators who wanted to create a global registry of grant recipients, but there was no facilitating body in the middle. So yeah, the working group is essentially trying to create better infrastructure for addressing these problems, and I do see more DAOs and more projects going towards data-backed impact measurement. And I also see multiple tooling companies that are addressing gaps and things like global registry of grantees, and also sort of increasing reputation once you get grants from one ecosystem and sort of porting over to the other. So yeah, so far it has not been great, but now we have a collective of people that is trying to do God's work.
Interesting, huh? Tomi, what do you think of this? I know you're very involved in the governance side of many of these aspects. Like, do you believe even better governments will help on grant giving?
I think it comes back to what Aman mentioned before, that we are thinking that, okay, we're decentralized, so we cannot be organized. A bit what Andreas was also saying. So I think coming from like leadership, strategy, and organizational development background, yes, we need some sort of structure, right? And when we have a structure, then it's easier to have these sub-DAOs or something looking at budgets on themselves and like releasing RFPs to the community, asking for solutions to things that are really needed for these strategic objectives right now, and then reporting on the impact later. And it's also a matter of like knowledge management in the organization, that you have some static bodies that stay over time, and then you have like this adaptive working group structure where these sub-circles are popping up. So I think we need to combine the best of the Web 2 with the new decentralized thinking.
Easier said than done though, huh? But that's something you can... Well guys, as we're wrapping up, my best friend the Bell is with me. So I'm going to ask you quick 1 or 2 word answers. I'm going to give you questions, and we're going to go one-to-one. Hope you guys are ready. And the Bell is here to keep us honest. I'll start from you, Andreas. Andreas, if there's one thing you can change about DAOs, what would it be?
Free money.
Free money. Massimo.
Oh, same question. So many things, but it's going to take time. There will be things that will change.
Amandeep, one thing you want to change, if you could.
How we define decentralization.
Oh, good one. Tomi.
Structure.
We're all in Dubai. What's your favorite thing about Dubai this week?
Gold.
Gold. Gold.
I got it.
Where are you spending your time?
In the gold market.
A gold market. Amandeep, favorite thing with Dubai?
Yeah, the cars, probably.
The what?
The cars.
Hey, the car, here you go. Massimo.
This is easy. Sand.
Sand, here we go. Favorite thing about Dubai, Andreas?
The weather.
There you go. I'm going to start for you here. This is a tricky one.
Oh.
What's your favorite thing about the, let me start, not Cardano, crypto. What's your favorite thing about our crypto ecosystem? Not even Cardano, our broader ecosystem.
Well, it's new. I love it.
Massimo.
Puts together everything, business, technology, democracy, everything.
Come on.
The fact that we can run this perpetual experiment and optimize things.
Free internet.
Free internet. Wow. Okay. I'm sorry for you, Tom. If you're not in the crypto industry, what would you do? What industry would you be in?
Not Salesforce.
Not Salesforce.
Yeah, I'd probably be doing a PhD in physics. Yeah.
Wow, really? Interesting. Massimo.
Winemaking.
Of course, that's the way to do it.
Nothing. I would be unemployed.
Oh, this is a tricky one. If you can hold one crypto asset for the rest of your life, not ADA, not Cardano, what is the one you would hold for the rest of your life that you're not allowed to sell for the next 10 years?
Snack.
CryptoKitties.
CryptoKitties, my God. Hopefully, I think.
Should I say Moodang? But maybe not.
Tommy.
Peak.
Really? Here we go. Man, if you guys managing treasuries, I know what's going to happen there. Tommy, if you could go back to school today, what is the one course you wish you would take that you wish you had taken back in the day?
One course?
Yeah.
I don't know about one course, but I would study something to work with the youth. Probably.
With the youth?
Yeah.
Maybe more computer science.
Computer science. Massimo?
Brain anatomy. It would help with AI.
Wow. Brain anatomy.
History.
Here we go. History, of course. Really relevant to my next question. If you could go back to time in history, any period of time, you can go back in history, which period would you want to live in?
Ancient Rome, but not being a slave.
3,000 years ago.
What is that? 3,000.
Very beginning of the ledgers, you know?
Boom, here we go.
Yeah, 2013 with a bit more money with me.
Yeah, I'm more humble. I would say October 2020.
2020, here we go. Let's talk about 2013. The documentary that said that Satoshi is Peter Todd. Do you believe it or not? Is Satoshi that Peter Todd from an HBO documentary or no? Andreas?
He's not.
He's not?
When he came with me in Turin to ask for little money in our bank, I was sure he was not Satoshi. But he's a great guy in any case.
Amandeep?
Yeah, probably not.
Not?
Yeah, I don't know this guy, but I know Satoshi.
Oh, here we go. That's it. And the last question to finish the panel, guys, this is a question I ask everybody that comes on my TV show or on the podcast or on stage. I'm going to start for you, Tomi. If you could have lunch or dinner with one person, dead or alive, lunch or dinner with one person, dead or alive, who would you have lunch or dinner with?
Probably Gandhi.
Gandhi. Wow.
I don't know, maybe Sheikh Hamdan, because I like his Instagram stories, so always wanted to meet him. Yeah.
Very diplomatic. Here you go. Sheikh Hamdan, if you're listening, he's Amandeep likes you.
Gilgamesh, always the same time, you know, beginning of writing, ledger, everything.
Wow. And to finish off, guys, our panel on the transparent and efficient decentralized treasury management, Andreas, if you could have lunch or dinner with one person, dead or alive, who would you have lunch or dinner with?
Oh, I would love to have breakfast with Rihanna.
Rihanna. Guys, thank you very much. A big hand of applause for our panel. Thank you very much, guys. We'll see you later today on That Perspective. Great job, guys.